Very, very sorry, guys. I've been having some connection issues, and it seems that for some reason my presentation is not working. So, anyway, let me just present my slides. I'll just probably present the part of my screen so I can share. All right. So, hold on a second, guys. I'm very sorry for the inconvenience. This should work. All right. Let's get started. Um, I would just like to confirm. Can you drop me a line or two down the comments section once you're able to see my presentation? Okay. What is going on? The browser can't access your screen. Try capturing a different screen to see if this continues. Okay, hold on. Uh, we're having some problems with that as well. So I'm gonna try and just upload the presentation. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Uh, I've been having some terrible problems. Okay, anyway, um, yeah. So, are you having some difficulties with your speaking examination, perhaps, or are you struggling with the writing part of the examination? Let me know down the comments section because I'm going to help you to figure out what you're going to do to enable you to sort of solve your problems when it comes to the writing and the speaking parts of the examination for today. Okay, so if you are experiencing some problems with your examination, let me know what your issues are, what your problems are, what specific aspects of speaking and writing you're having a terrible time with. And I'm going to help you to figure out what we can do to also, um, like enable you to get a better result when you take your examination. Okay, so not yet. Oh, not yet. Yeah, I know the presentation is not loading for some reason, but I'm uploading it at the moment, and hopefully, this is going to solve the problem. Okay, I'm terribly sorry. This hasn't happened to me before. I'm having some sort of restrictions with uh StreamYard for some reason. I mean, this is the first time I'm having problems with StreamYard. But anyway, we're gonna do a make do with what we have right now. I'm also going to try and join in using a different account if I can do that from another browser or whatnot. Let me see if I can do that. Uh, but for now, yeah, I'm going to have to uh oh my right like make do with the presentation being uploaded. All right. Okay. So I'm seeing a lot of people who are having issues with the various parts of the examination. Okay, here we go. Thankfully, I have my lecturer presenting. Okay, great. My goodness. I also want to just confirm if you guys can hear me clearly. You have no issues whatsoever with my voice. I hope you can hear me. All right. Yep. Okay, all good. All right, so let's talk about the speaking component of the examination. All right, so firstly, I'd like to discuss with you certain parts of the speaking examination and also what you can do in these specific parts of the examination to get a better result. All right, so let's get started. Once again, my name is Brian. I have actually taken the IELTS a couple of times, and I'm very proud to say that in one attempt, I was able to get a 9.0, which is the perfect score on the IELTS speaking examination. So I think I'm in the right position to be talking to you about the IELTS speaking examination, right? Okay, so note that the speaking examination, whether it be IELTS on computer or IELTS on paper, will be an interview, right? So, what interview are we going to have in the examination? It's sort of a personal interview. And before I start with anything, I just want to probably give you a premise on what you should expect when you take the IELTS. It is not a job interview. That's one thing that I should actually let you understand. Like, IELTS speaking is not a job interview, because if you think that the IELTS speaking examination is an interview, then you will try to give very impressive answers and you'll be overly obsessed or focused about the responses more than the actual communication process that is involved in IELTS speaking. What I mean to say is, since this is a personal interview, you should actually talk in a very personal way. What I'm also trying to say here is that when you take the examination, you should treat your examiner not really as an examiner, but maybe closer to a friend, like someone that you haven't met for a long time, maybe an acquaintance of yours, or maybe a family member that you have not seen for a long time, and you just want to share with that person all of the things that you want to probably share based on your personal experience and encounters for the longest time that you haven't met each other, if you get what I'm trying to say here. All right. Now, I'm also going to talk about the test format of IELTS speaking. The first part of your examination is going to be your introduction and interview. In this first part of the examination, the examiner is going to ask you very personal questions. And when I say personal questions, these are like, do you work or do you study? Or maybe, where do you live? Do you live in a house or do you rent an apartment? Or perhaps you would be asked what your favorite food is, or um, what your favorite recreational or leisure activities are. Do you get my point, guys? This is a very personal introductory portion in your examination. I'm going to delve into that in more detail later, but that's actually the gist of the introduction and interview part, which is part one. Part two is your individual long term. In this part of the examination, you will be provided a topic, and it's going to be printed on what we call the task card, or it's like a cue card. It contains a main topic and also 3 to 4 sub questions related to the main topic that you will need to answer in 1 to 2 minutes. You will be given 1 minute preparation time, and you will have to talk for 2 minutes straight. Okay, so that's part two of your examination. And part three of the examination is going to be your two-way discussion. So I already discussed part one, and I would have to say that part three is actually not so different from part one. Only that the questions in part three are going to be a lot more abstract, a bit more conceptual compared to what you would get in part one of the exam. Do you get my point, guys? I hope you're following. But what happens here basically in this part of the examination is that the examiner is going to ask you more difficult questions that require a little bit of argumentation. And yeah, basically it's going to be a bit harder. So if you have to reserve your brain for any part of the examination that will require intellectual or abstract reasoning, then that's part three of your examination. Okay, right. Oh, guys, let me know where you're from. I just want to know our audience demographic for tonight. Let me know what location you're in right now, where you're currently watching this live webinar from. Okay, and yeah, I hope like I'd know where you are at this time, right? Just type your location. I'd like to know our audience demographic for tonight. Right. But regardless of the demographic, guys, did you know that the IELTS is actually standard across all countries? Regardless of where you're taking the examination, your test will be like extremely identical. It's going to be the same experience whether you're living here in Asia or you're from another part of the globe. It's going to be absolutely similar, right? So we have some people from the Philippines. We have some individuals living in La Union, Ilocos Norte, Baguio. Okay, so we have some people from other countries as well here. Good day, everybody. Now, I'm going to actually start talking about the different parts of the examination one by one. So, I want you to listen carefully so you would understand what you're expected to do in the different parts of your examination. Now, when you walk inside the room during your speaking examination, usually it's a Zoom call nowadays. It's not anymore like a face to face interaction between you and the examiner. You will be doing it via Zoom. So you usually you will be greeted by your examiner. The examiner would just probably ask you a couple of very easy warm up questions just to probably get you more comfortable and prepared to take on the challenge of answering questions for your speaking exam. And you would know, listen to me carefully, you would know that your examination has already started when the examiner actually delivers the spiel. What is the spiel? When you hear the examiner saying, this is the speaking examination of the International English Language Testing System, conducted on, and then probably the date and the center. I'm examiner. When the examiner introduces him or herself, that means that the examination has already started. Anything before that or after the 11 to 14-minute interaction that you will have with your examiner will not anymore be graded. Okay? So, yeah, that's that. Right. In this first part of the examination, the exam. Sorry, guys, keep getting disconnected. I don't know what's going on. Hey, do you work or you used to be? You don't just provide a response like, I work or I study. That's not sufficient for IELTS. If you want to provide a good response in your examination, you're supposed to provide a little bit of explanation to that. For example, you could probably say, I work as a nurse in one of the largest tertiary hospitals in my country, which is the Philippines. I have been working in this hospital with a 300 bed capacity for over 5 years now, and I'm currently assigned in the emergency room. I can say that this is a very enjoyable and exciting job because I'm able to not only meet a lot of people with different needs and different cases, but also practice my critical thinking skills and my emergency care skills, which I think will be very useful as well because I'm very much exposed to the environment of the healthcare, the emergency room environment. So I can use this when I work abroad. Something like that. You would expand your answers and not just provide a simple yes or no as part of the exam. However, let's just emphasize that there are instances when the examiner will stop you from talking. All right. So, for example, your answer is very long. There's a possibility for the examiner to stop you from talking, like midway through your speech. Examiner will stop from talking. Is this actually a bad thing? What do you think, guys? If the examiner says, for example, okay, now let's want to talk about food. What is your favorite food? And you're not able to finish. Is this a good or a bad thing? What do you think, guys? Comment your answer down in the comment section. What do you think, guys? Is this a good thing or a bad thing? For example, this examiner stops you from talking. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Yeah. Just gonna very quickly check on Facebook, guys, because I'm not sure if I'm being broadcasted. Something's really off right now. Okay, we have some comments. All right, it's a good thing or it's a bad thing. What do you think? Mm-hmm. It's a good thing. All right, seems reasonable. Okay, yeah, great. Okay, actually, in the examination, it's not a bad thing if the examiner stopped you from talking. Again, it is not a bad thing. In fact, it's okay. It doesn't mean to say the examiner hates your answer or the examiner doesn't like how you're talking. It's just that the examiner needs to ask you a range of different questions that are written in the cue cards of the examiner, and the examiner needs to cover all of that within 4 to 5 minutes. Okay, so remember, IELTS Part 1 is only for 45 minutes. If there's an instance, for example, that the examiner um feeling that your answer is taking too long, the examiner will just cut you out and will say, "Thank you. Move on to talk about food, or let's move on to talk about something else." That's okay. That's perfectly fine. There's no harm in your score when the examiner does that, and it doesn't mean that the examiner hates your answer or something like that. But my advice is to always directly answer the question, because if you don't provide a direct response and you about explain everything before you go to the correct answer, if the examiner cuts you in between, you will not be able to give a response. For example, when you're asked, let's talk about recreational activities. What's your favorite recreational activity? And you talked about the importance of leisure. I believe leisure is so important in the humanity of people because it enables them to have a form of relaxation, also relieve of all of the stress they get from work. And the examiner moves on and says, "Okay, now let's move on to talk about shop." So you're not able to finish your response anymore. So just answer first the question and then go and explain later. For example, you could say, "Well, I enjoy reading books during my spare time. This I think is a very helpful recreational or leisure activity for me to be able to relieve my stress, from all the stress I get from working." That's how you go about answering the questions, and not explaining first before giving your response. Know if you know what I'm trying to say here. Okay, chop. I don't know. It might be a network, I guess, because the weather here in the Philippines is really bad. But I'll try to figure out a way by which I can fix this. Hold on. Can you give me a second, guys? Is it better now, guys, or not? If it's not, I will reconnect and I'll be back in a few. If I am a little bit better or if I sound a little bit clearer. Hopefully, this gets fixed very, very shortly. All right. Sorry for that. Hello, guys. I'm just testing my audio. Can I be heard? Cha people. Oh my goodness. I'm not sure if it's still me. I already reconnected to another network. I'm not sure. All right. Anyway, we're gonna try and figure out a way to fix this. Because, uh, th- yeah, clear already. Okay. Thank you so much for confirming that. Right. Yeah, so that's part one of the exam. Let me just repeat what I just said before I actually got a little choppy. Okay. In the first part of the examination, it is very important that you provide a response first before you go about doing the explanation. All right. So don't explain first before your response. Give a response first, a very direct and clear answer to the question. And that's the time for you to start explaining later. Right. Now, this is actually something that you should understand about part one of the examination. And I think all of the parts of the examination for that matter. Your answers do not matter. Again, let me repeat that for clarity, guys. Your answers do not matter. What I mean to say is, you might actually provide a very shallow response, or maybe your response is not really life changing or not really very dramatic or emotive that still change the perspective of your examiner. But still, that is a good enough answer, because what's graded in your examination is not your answer, but your communication. Your ability to communicate with the person you're talking to is more important than the response that you're providing. Your answers do not hold as much weight as that of your speaking ability and your communication skills. Now let's move on to the 2 minute speech. Who's having a difficulty with the part two part two portion of your speaking examination, your long turn, your individual long turn, or your 2 minute speech? Are you having some problems here? All right. So, in this part of the examination, as I've mentioned a while ago, you will be provided a topic and three sub questions to respond to. Okay. And you will have 1 to 2 minutes to answer the question with 1 minute preparation time. Um, I actually believe that a lot of people struggle with this one because it is not normal to talk for 2 minutes. I mean, nobody talks for 2 minutes and monopolizes the conversation, right? So I believe this is something that is not familiar to a lot of us, talking for 2 minutes, but you have to do this. And my personal take on this is just use the guide questions, all of the guide questions. Try to respond to all of those four guide questions that are provided for you. And if you run out of things to say, or your time is not yet up, how would you know your time is up, by the way? The examiner will stop you. So until the examiner stops you from talking, keep on talking. So if for example, the examiner has not stopped you from talking, and you're running out of thoughts to actually deliver, then what you want to do is to think of a very good personal experience or story that you can connect to the question, and just talk about that for the rest of the time. Narrating a story is much easier than formulating a new response, or perhaps trying to expound a bit more what you've already said. And chances are, if you try and think more, you will end up shutting off your brain, and you might not be able to talk anymore. And you might just give up and flag and say, thank you, or that's all, which is not really good for IELTS part two. So think of a good story, a personal experience perhaps that you've had regarding the topic, and share it with your examiner. That's the best way to go about dealing with your part two of your examination. Okay. Do not start part two anymore with something like, today I am asked to talk about so and so topic, and I would like to discuss. Don't do that anymore. If your topic, for example, is talk about a recent trip that you have had, then just say, I went to Tokyo 2 months ago, and just proceed with your response. I hope you're following. Okay. Now, let us proceed to the third part of the examination. Okay. In this third part of the examination, you're supposed to provide a discussion. And the questions here are a lot tougher than what you're going to get in the first part of the test. Um, a lot more difficult, a lot more challenging, and more mentally draining and demanding. So the examiner will ask you more difficult abstract questions here that require a bit of argumentation. And there's also a propensity for your examiner to challenge your answers and start a debate in some cases. So here, answer the questions as freely as you can, provide concrete examples to support your arguments or your responses, and try to really use up the time explaining. And why am I saying this? All right. Why am I explaining this to you? And why am I emphasizing this? It's because there will be a great chance that the examiner will ask you more difficult and unexpected questions if your answers are short. Let me explain that. If your answers are not so long, examiners will actually need to still cover your 4 to 5 minutes of response time for this part of the examination. And there are not really a lot of questions on their cue card or their task card. So in the task card, usually there are just a couple of questions and a few follow-up questions. And if your answers are too short, then that will compel your examiner to ask more questions just to consume 4 to 5 minutes. And God knows what kinds of questions they can ask if they run out of questions from the cue card. So there are instances in which candidates complain that the questions they're asked in part three are not anymore related to the question in part two, or perhaps they're random questions they didn't see coming, and that's because their answers are extremely short. If your answers are long and you try and provide a lengthy response, then the examiner will not anymore ask you a lot of questions and will just proceed to, conclude everything right after and say, okay, meh, that's the end of your speaking examination. By the way, guys, and this is actually true, a very good indicator of good performance for your part three of the examination is when the examination stops abruptly. It feels like you still want to talk. You know, what I'm trying to say here, like, you feel you're being shortchanged. You still want to talk, but the examiner says, "Thank you. That's the end of your speaking examination." Like, you still want to answer more questions, but you're done already with your examination. That is a very good indicator, and that means to say that you did well in your examination, and the examiner doesn't really need a lot of other information, and probably has already measured your performance through and through. Remember that the examiners will not extend the speaking examination just because you're a good candidate, not because you're an excellent candidate. The examiner will actually provide a very extended speaking examination for you. No, if the examiner really wants to talk to you, he or she can do so after the test is over. But during the course of the examination, there is absolutely no reason for the examiner to do that. Okay? Just 11 to 14 minutes will be the max time for the speaking examination. And if the examiner has gotten everything he or she needs, then he or she will just conclude the examination. Simple. That's how it goes in the test. Okay. All right. Now, here is a question. I wrote and had 7 in all, except in reading that I had 6.5. That's actually pretty good performance already. I think if you got 7 in speaking and 6.5 overall band score, then you are already qualified to apply to the US. All right. As long as your examination is still valid, definitely. Okay, Arhin. Okay. Yeah. Right. So there you go, and that's for the third part of the examination. Now, I just want to very briefly discuss with you the marking criteria that you're going to be graded for in the test. Just this one before I move on to the writing part of the examination. You will be graded based off 4 criteria for marking. The first one is your fluency and coherence. This is your talkativeness, your willingness to talk, your ability to provide a response that is connected to the question, your ability to talk without hesitations or very long pauses in between your responses, and things like that. That's fluency and coherence, accounting for 25% of your test score. Vocabulary will be 25%. This is not to say that you have a very deep, vocabulary. It's more about your ability to use many different words based on the contexts and the topics that you're going to get in the examination, and your full flexibility, meaning to say you're not using the same words over and over again. But more importantly, accuracy is of top priority. And that means that you should actually provide a response that or sorry, you should actually use words that are accurate, not misused, just to impress the examiner. Grammar, you already know. You have to have good control over your grammatical structures. You shouldn't actually make a lot of mistakes. And if you do make mistakes, they shouldn't impede the communication process. They should not affect the communication process. And so, like, not all grammar errors are made the same, I would have to say, because there are some grammatical mistakes that can be forgiven, especially if they do not really affect the communication that you're trying to initiate with your examiner. But if your grammatical mistakes actually cause a misunderstanding, for example, or might probably result in the examiner not understanding what you're saying or not comprehending what you're saying, then that's actually going to be an issue. And lastly, pronunciation. Guys, you do not need to have an accent just to get a good score. You don't need to use the American, British, or Australian accent to get a good score. Okay, let me just clarify that. Pronunciation is just that, your ability to produce the right sounds, your vowels, your consonants, and the right intonation. It's not to say that you should have a particular accent. Even if you have a neutral sounding accent, you can get as much as a band 9 in the test. Because remember, IELTS is not intended for first language English users. It is designed for second, third, fourth language users of English, or people whose first language is not English. So there will be a bit of leeway here, and the examiners will understand that you cannot produce a British or American or Australian accent. Okay. And you don't really need to also imitate those accents, because that might sound a little unnatural when you're taking the examination, which might eventually just pull down your test score. All right. Um, Now, we are midway through our discussion, but if you have any questions about the speaking examination, let me know down the comments section so I can respond to your questions, and I can provide for you some insights on some of the issues that you're encountering in the test. Okay. Now, at this point as well, I will be discussing the writing examination a little bit to enable our audience here to also have a glimpse of what it is to write for IELTS, particularly for the essay writing part of the examination, or um, the part 2 part of your examination. Okay. Right. No questions, guys. All right. Thank you so much again for those who attended. I'm very, very sorry about the technical problems that we have encountered so far, but I think everything is going smoothly at this time. You can also share this meeting with your friends and family members who are taking the IELTS very soon, or who have plans of going to the US. And of course, do not forget, if you have plans of working in the US as a nurse, contact AMN Healthcare International. You can drop them a comment or a message down the message chat box, or just go to their page, follow them, and message them, so you can actually you know kickstart your application going to the US as a nurse. All right, so anyway, let's talk about the writing examination at this point. Since you don't have any questions about the speaking examination, I feel like writing is a very difficult examination for IELTS. And the good thing is, you're not really required to get a 7 in the writing component of the IELTS, at least if you're applying to the US as a nurse. And that's actually a great thing, because this is a difficult examination. You will be given a topic to talk about. To write about, I'm sorry, and you should actually provide a discursive consideration of relevant issues. Candidates should read the tasks carefully and provide a full and relevant response. Let me just talk about these 2 keywords right here. First, you have to provide a full response. And number 2, you have to provide a relevant response. When we say full, that means that if there are 2 or 3 questions or 3 parts or three stems to a question. You're able to respond to all three or all two, or if there's just one, then you're able to provide a comprehensive response for just that one question. A relevant response, on the other hand, means that you're not actually going astray or you're sticking to the topic. You're not talking about issues not related to the task. And I feel that the great majority of candidates who are taking the examination and not getting their desired scores for the writing examination flunk because of not providing a full response. It's actually common knowledge in the IELTS industry, at least from the test preparation perspective or from the admin perspective, that candidates who do not get a good score actually do not produce complete responses. Maybe they are providing a response, but it's just partial. They provided the response, but it's not complete. You get my point? You're asked two questions, for example, causes and effects, but you only talked about the causes, right? Another common pitfall in the exam is when you're asked about causes and effects and you started talking about solutions. That's actually not warranted, not required by the question, but you're writing that anyway. And that's actually not relevant to the topic. It's actually off topic. So remember that IELTS writing is an operational test. You're asked to do certain things and you're supposed to deliver based on the triggers that are provided for you. So, another thing that you should remember in the writing examination is it needs to be in the academic or semi formal or neutral style. You're not going to write creatively here. You're not going to be writing with a lot of idiomatic expressions that might not sound a little formal. And at the same time, it is not just an explorative writing task, it's argumentative because it's an academic paper that you're writing. IELTS writing task 2 is going to be for 40 minutes. You also have a part 1 here. Writing task 1 is going to be for 20 minutes, but I'm going to just talk about the essay writing part. Candidates are required to write a 250-word essay in response to a particular point of view or problem or argument within 40 minutes. And remember the task 2 being a longer task compared to part 1, which is just 150 words, will account for 66.66% of your test score. So this is a bit more important compared to part 1 of your examination. We always suggest, and this is actually a good tip I want to share with you, that you start first with writing task 2 because it's going to account for a greater percentage of your test score, and task 1 is just going to make up just a small portion of your score. So it's always advisable to start with task 2 first. And then just some reminders. You get penalty for irrelevant or off-topic responses. You also get penalty if you write in bullet points or notes you didn't write as in full connected texts. And you also get severe penalties for plagiarism. Plagiarism meaning to say you copied a template somewhere and you used it during your examination, and examiners are trained to identify them. So don't use anything templated. Make sure everything in your exam is organic. You're not copying anyone. Also, you have to produce the language and not copy the language from other sources. For example, if you know the lyrics of a particular song, or if you have a piece of poetry that you want to put there, or maybe a cliche, a saying, a proverb, don't put them in your exam because these are actually memorized and they don't show that you can produce language. So they're not going to give you extra credit in the test. Yes, in most writing pieces, we see them, but in IELTS, please avoid writing any of these memorized pieces because they can really significantly pull your grade down. Okay. Also, you should not copy directly from the question. So try to implement a bit of paraphrasing, changing up a few of the words from the question so that your introduction will sound different from the question. This is an example of a question that you can have in your examination. Okay, so I would read, You should spend about 40 minutes on this task. Write about the following topics. So these are the initial instructions that you're going to get in the test. And inside the box, you will see the question along with the instruction. The instruction is, do you agree or disagree? And the question is about um, retirement or working for as long as they want to. And then next, you will see additional instructions. Here it says, give reasons for your answer and include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. Write at least 250 words. Let me just ask everybody here, just for the purpose of discussion, how many questions do you see? Right? How many questions do you see? Yes, we have do you agree or disagree here, but how many questions really can you see in this task prompt? Do we have one? Do we have two? Or do we have three? How many questions can you see? Note that in the IELTS, you can have one, two, three questions only by test design. So I don't think there's an instance in which you will be asked four questions. It can be just one or two or three questions, but certainly it cannot exceed three. And the correct answer to that is there are actually two questions in this task. The first question is, people should be allowed to continue to work for as long as they want to. All right, that's the first question. And the second question is, they should not be forced to retire at a particular age, such as 60 or 65. All right, so these are two different questions. First one is working only for as long as they want to. And the second one is it's about retiring at the particular age, such as 60 or 65. And you might be wondering, aren't they related to each other? No. And let me give you some examples so that you could figure out what I'm trying to say here. People should be allowed to continue to work for as long as they want to does not even have retirement in it. And what it means is that for as long as you want the job and you're capable of doing the job, you should be allowed to do that, because there are certain occupations that even if it's not yet retirement, um, they do not accept people who are already of age. Do you get my point? Like, there are industries like this, and I think you will agree with me. For example, in-flight hospitality, or even like the concierge or the front desk officers, or those people who encounter people or other individuals on a day-to-day basis, like, the salespeople and all that. Even fast food crew members here in the Philippines have age restrictions. Like, if you're 30 years old and above, then you are not anymore qualified to take on that position. And what this means is that you should be able to, you should be qualified to perform the tasks, even if you're already a little bit over age, as long as you like the job. What if your dream in life is to really be a flight attendant for like forever? Even if you're already 50, or you're not yet retiring, maybe 45, you should still be able to um fly. uh but some companies do not allow that. So again, this is actually what this question is all about. Like, putting age restrictions and not retiring ages yet. Like, you should be allowed to continue to work for as long as you want to. And the second question here is actually about um forced retirement. Okay, so forced retirement right here means that, when you're 60 or 65, you should be actually legally mandated to retire, right? So these are two different questions, and they should be addressed separately. In fact, in IELTS, what we suggest that you do is you provide one response to the first question and one response to the other question, so that you're able to provide two separate paragraphs addressing the two questions that are indicated in the task description. If you're not able to do that, do you know what score you're going to get? If you're only able to provide a partial answer, you're lucky to already get a band 5, because you're able to provide only a response to the first question or the second question, but not all of the questions, fortunately. Okay, so that is the common cause for failure. And I think the most common cause for failure, at least here in the Philippines. Okay, so a lot of candidates here in the country have the lowest average score for task attainment for not being able to answer the question fully, right? So that's how you respond to this question, right? Note also that in the IELTS writing examination, you should follow a procedure, and this procedure starts with brainstorming or outlining. Don't write yet. Try to think of what you're going to write, put it in an outline for 5 minutes, then you start writing for 30 minutes. And then you perform a bit of editing towards the end of your examination for 5 minutes. I think this is very important, and you should follow this process, because if you don't, then you run the risk of not being able to finish your exam. And let me explain why. Sometimes when you jump at the writing task immediately, there are instances midway through your writing that you realize that you don't know what else to write. And you pause, you think, and for 5 minutes, you don't know what you're going to write. And that's wasted time. You could have allocated that 5 minutes pause at the beginning of the task to write an outline so that you will be guided and you would know what you're going to write and what kind of writing you would produce based off the outline you've prepared. If you don't have an outline, it significantly slows you down as a non native English user, because your writing cannot be juggled with your thinking. If you know what I'm trying to say, it's really hard to think and write at the same time in your second language. Unlike in your first language, in which you have probably unlimited or infinite cognitive resource that you can write continuously based off your thoughts and not anymore have any translation time in your head. When you're writing in the second language, it's difficult. Have you tried writing on social media in English? It's hard, right? Like starting it is super hard. Sometimes you just don't want to post anymore because it's English. And you just want to probably write in your native language instead. It's hard because you cannot juggle thinking of what you're going to write and writing at the same time. Since you're using your second language, you have limited cognitive resource in your second language. That is why it's important that you prepare first a plan. You just think through and through the question, and probably provide a response for maybe 4 to 5 minutes, drafting your plan. Just do the thinking and brainstorming during that time, and then do the writing later continuously. It's a bit more efficient to do this in the test. Okay? All right. And then I hate people who strike out entire paragraphs while they're writing. I feel some people here have experienced this. Like they write something and they scrap the entire thing, erasing every bit. That's a waste of time. If you want to edit, don't edit midway. Edit towards the end of your exam when you still have time, because otherwise you will not finish your exam. Your goal while you're writing is to finish the test and not to edit and perfect every sentence or every paragraph in the test. It's more important that you accomplish first the examination, and if you want to do a bit of tweaking, you do that at the end of the test or at the end of the writing phase when you still have your 5 minutes editing time. Okay, follow this process and you're going to get a better result. Oh, right. So you will be graded again based off band score criteria. And these are the things that you're going to be graded for: task attainment, your ability to formulate and develop a position, and provide evidence and examples. Okay. Write 250 words. Oh, remember, guys, you're supposed to have an argumentative paper here, or write something sort of like a position paper. So if you're asked your personal opinion, whether you agree or disagree, don't sit on the fence. Don't stay in the middle. It's going to definitely affect you from, getting a good score in the examination. Okay. Um. Yeah. So we have some people here who are applying, but I'm totally unsure if you're qualified. But you can contact AMN nonetheless, AMN Healthcare International, by messaging them here so that you can check if your credentials are going to meet their requirements, certainly. Okay. Now, another thing, uh, coherence and cohesion. This is, I think, the layout of your paper. It's the overall clarity and fluency of the message. Your cohesive devices, for example, like logical connectors, moreover, furthermore, however, etc. And also referencing, like using pronouns like this, that, those, or these, can help you to elevate your score here. But more importantly, it's the layout of your exam, like the proper paragraphing in the test, because there are some candidates who write very long paragraphs for one argument and then just write maybe 2 lines for another argument, and this is just so heavily unfair. And so it's going to impact your score greatly in the test. Your examination should look very neat and organized. And by organized, I mean that you have a relatively shorter intro than your body, as well as a relatively shorter conclusion than your body. And your body paragraphs are fairly even in length and elaboration. Nothing could be more disheartening than getting a low score just because your conclusion is the longest paragraph in the entire examination, as if you don't want to let go. You have to make sure that you plan your structure, and it should look good at the onset even without reading. Okay. Lexical resource is your range of vocabulary and accuracy. And a lot of people feel like this is, using big words and all that, like all the highfalutin language, or maybe expressive terminology, or perhaps the use of jargons. That's not true, and that's not the case when you're doing the writing exam. Your vocabulary should be accurate and appropriate. When we say accurate, then you're using the words correctly, and appropriate according to the context that you're trying to convey. Even if you have only simple words, it is possible to get a band 9 as long as you're combining them effectively. For example, if you wrote I believe, and well, believe is a common word, that's fine. But if you use a word that describes how far you believe, such as I completely agree or I firmly believe, then you're going to get a higher score because you're able to combine words effectively. That's what you call a collocation. And in the examination, that is the hallmark or the best indicator of advanced vocabulary usage in the test. So don't be discouraged to use adjectives or adverbs as long as they're appropriately used. You do not need to uh, use idiomatic expressions to get a better result. You don't need to memorize anything. Just use the words that are simple but in good combinations, and you're going to get the very good score in your exam. And finally, grammatical range and accuracy. I think it's a little bit stricter when it comes to the writing test because you have editing time here. So take care when you're writing. Make sure you check for subject verb agreement, pronoun usage, consistency of verb tenses, and prepositions. These are some of the most common areas of mistakes that um, involve the examination or candidates. Okay, right. So, yeah, that pretty much covers all of the things that I need to discuss for today. But if you have any questions whatsoever, let me know down the comment section. I still have a few minutes to answer your questions. I again apologize for all of the inconvenience due to the problems we have encountered with the connection early into this meeting. But I hope that this has been a useful session. And do note that AMN Healthcare International is partnered with 9.09er in providing test preparation for you guys. So if you are a nurse registered with AMN, actually AMN pays for your test preparation and all of the other things that are involved in getting you ready for the examination. So yeah, take advantage of that, and I hope that you would be able to clear your IELTS very soon. I think IELTS is a challenging examination, but with the right preparation and practice and the right guidance from your coaches and your lecturers, you will definitely be able to ace your examination. Okay, so once again, my name is Brian.